Are people the problem? Are guns the problem? Is education the problem? Is the government the problem? Are we the problem? And how do we fix this, and where do we start? And how do we make this not just a trend on social media and then forget about it like it feels like we do with every other cause? Like, who remembers the fires in Australia? I'm gonna start this video off with something that I learned from a TED Talk. I believe it was titled, "What I Learned from a 15-Year-Old Meth Addict About Leadership." The biggest thing that I took away from this was the question that he posed: what do you do when you're trying to help someone who doesn't want help from you, or who doesn't want to actually help themselves in the first place? And the man was working with kids in the prison system, and he was trying to help them, right? And he came along this kid who acted like he didn't want help, and he wasn't willing to answer any questions, and he was being very difficult.
In Latin, they didn't have a word for leadership. It was a limited language, so they co-opted other words, and one of the words that scholars believe they use in place of leadership was ajuko. Ajuko means to extract from, to draw out, or to grow from within.
He goes on to say that humans can't help but answer questions. We love questions. If I ask you, what did your childhood home look like? You picture that in your mind. What do your shoes look like? You picture that in your mind. You can't help but answer questions that are posed to you. Unconsciously, you answer them. It's like reading. If you look at a bunch of words, you're gonna read them. You can't help it. And why I think this is relevant to the video that I'm making today, and relevant to what's going on in the United States right now with protests, riots, murdering of African American males, racism. There's a lot going on in my country right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Our economy isn't doing great. People are dying, there are riots, an election is coming up. There's a lot of energy in our country, and I think it's confusing to young people because this is a lot to take in, it's a lot to process. And for me personally, all I know is that I have an audience and I have a responsibility, and that I should use it for something good. And in this TED Talk, he finally realized that continuing to ask questions that were uncomfortable, that were awkward, and that maybe pressed too far, he realized that these questions were what eventually cracked the kid, because he couldn't help but change his perspective and really answer them in his head. He eventually expressed his emotions and his feelings, and he was really able to fix his sort of perceived broken mind that was unwilling to help and unwilling to change. And for that reason, that's why I believe that questions are the best place to start. Questions lead to conversations, and conversations lead to the sharing of even more perspectives. And that's the premise of this video and what I want this video to be. I may be a kid, I may be only 17, I may be a privileged white kid with no understanding of what it's really like. I don't want the purpose of this video to be me going on a rant about why racism is bad. I think we all know it's bad. I think we all want things and people to be treated equally. So we have a really international audience with a lot of different perspectives, ideas, beliefs, experiences from all ages. And I really want everyone to participate and to do their part in engaging in these conversations. Right behind me, we have a cop car, which I think is pretty interesting for this video. I read a study by the University of Toronto that said racism in babies starts as early as, I believe, 5 to 9 months. How does that happen in the first place? How do we stop that? Why is it happening? And how do we fix that? How do you raise your kids differently? What's the responsibility of a parent in raising their children regarding racism? What's the role of a teacher in school? What's the role of your friends? What's the role that you play? What's the role you play as a teammate, as a friend, as a classmate, as a student, as a musician, as an artist, as a person, as anyone living in society? What is our role regarding racism? I don't think it's really clear or mapped out for how to fix things or how to make things better, or where do we even start in the first place? It's not clear, and I think that's a major issue. And I don't remember ever being taught why racism is still prevalent in the United States today. Why, when I look around in my classroom, I only see majority white kids in the AP classes. What does that teach kids from the very beginning when you go into school and you see the white kids being in the gifted programs and the black kids already being separated from the beginning? I think a lot of this starts in schools. From the beginning as a kid, I remember the white kids being in the gifted groups, in the advanced placement groups, and they were perceived as smarter and more intelligent, and they got benefited because of that. And from a little kid, I remember that, seeing that in my head. From the beginning, I could feel the racism that was in our minds. Whether you thought it implicitly or not, it was there. And I wish we were taught about what role the government plays in this, what role white people play in this, what role everyone plays in this, and why it's still happening today. We aren't taught this in history. And I wonder, will we ever be transparent to it? Maybe not, I don't know. But I know that we can strive to fix it as best as we can. But I wonder what the best way to do that is. Is it to continue to ask questions? Does it take political change? Does it take little incremental changes in our day-to-day lives? Is it up to the individual? Is it up to the government? Is it up to organizations? And I've been seeing notes from companies like any major corporation saying that, we feel terrible about what happened and we will make a commitment to not be racist and this and that and that, and it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel genuine from any large figure or government organization or business or company. It doesn't feel genuine anymore because you know you're supposed to say something. But how do we make people actually care, and how do we make action easier to take that's effective? It feels like whenever anything bad happens in the world, every company, organization, celebrity rushes to post something on social media, and then you never hear about it again. And it's like, what value is that bringing? What is the point of that? It feels like everyone is supposed to say something, and it never comes off as real. And what value is behind that? What is that really doing? What are ways that celebrities and people with influence and companies, can they do something more than just give money that's a tax write-off or write a note about how sorry they are about the situation? I guess I don't see enough action that's long-term and that's sustainable, that it's actually doing things and making a real change. Obviously, giving money can help, but it just feels really generic and basic. For example, I think I read that police training is only 6 months, while training to become a barber or a hairstylist takes much longer. Why aren't police stations making it harder to become a police officer? Maybe they are in some places, but those are things I feel like we should be doing. As a society, we should be implementing more classes on racism. Why isn't it a mandatory class to learn about racism and how to help? Even with like psychology or finance, why aren't we being taught the important things? And why isn't that taught from an early age? Why aren't there classes in kindergarten about racism? Maybe they are. And it would be really interesting to use this time, because I know this is such an international audience. Do people do that in your country? Are you taught about racism wherever you live? What does the government say? What do people say? How does your country handle situations like this? And it makes me wonder, are people the problem? Are guns the problem? Is education the problem? Is the government the problem? Are we the problem? And how do we fix this, and where do we start? And how do we make this not just a trend on social media and then forget about it, like it feels like we do with every other cause? Like, who remembers the fires in Australia? Things like that, where everyone rushes to care, and then after that, bleh. I don't have the answers. I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying things in the right way, but I'm trying to understand, and I'm wondering what you guys think. Where do we start? What roles do we have to play? It's messed up. So again, I encourage you to have conversations in the comments of this video. That is the purpose of this video, to engage, to spark conversations, to bring your perspectives, and to have an open mind. Be respectful of other people. Hear people out. You don't always have to agree with other people, but you should at least listen and try to understand what they're saying and where they're coming from and why they think that and why they feel that. Because if you don't, then you're no better than they are. I will say though, in certain classes, like my AP language class, my teacher, Mr. Schrader, made us listen to a variety of TED Talks about the issue. And I think that was incredible for him to do, and I really appreciate him taking the time to have us delve into topics like that aren't necessarily supposed to be taught in an English language class, I don't think. One of the TED Talks we watched talked about looking at powerful, smart, influential black men and women to change up what you're seeing. Because I think we're used to seeing the stereotypical black guy who is a drug dealer, who has a gun, who is shooting people, who's in the hood. And that's messed up. That's our image of black people, and I think that's part of the issue. And she said just surround yourself with the right image of these people, that they are incredible, amazing people, and that we need to remind ourselves of that. I think we forget because we're fed the wrong thing, whether it's the news, the media, television, film, wherever the source is, it's not right. And we have to change up what we're seeing. It's like if all you eat is junk food, you're gonna not feel good. You need to hydrate, you need to eat clean in order to feel good, to think well. It's important what we digest. It's really important what we digest. And I think that's something that we can do, is to control what we digest, to balance what we watch, what we see. And I think that's something that we can be responsible for. I'm trying to process my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings. My heart hurts. Our country is not in a good place. And it's really interesting to be a teenager amidst this time. Yeah, those are the questions that I have. That's what I'm feeling, that's what I'm thinking right now. I care about all of you guys, seriously, and I hope that we can continue to have an optimistic perspective on things in the future. I hope that things will get better, and I want to be a part of that change. But for now, I'll see you guys in Perspectopia. So the rest of this video is supposed to be played out in the comments. This is just to spark ideas, just spark questions. Some of them may be simple, some of them may be difficult, but it's important to talk about it either way. Sending good vibes to everyone.